Hello Unity fans and welcome back to my game development series. It's been a while since I uploaded something, so today I'll be filling in that gap by presenting a few smaller but still very important things I've been working on in the last 3 weeks. Some of these can actually already be considered polishing the game, since they add a bit of extra value to something that could have worked relatively well without it. Or they improve the effectiveness or appeal of existing mechanics and systems. We'll be introducing female units, giving buildings an actual doorway through which the units can enter and exit, adding some visuals to the big picture, improving the task system to prevent bugs, and updating the fog of war and exploration systems. Let's get going. First off, I added some female units to the game. The asset pack I bought when starting off also contains female characters that can be built up from various parts, so you can create a lot of variety in the look of the units, as with the males. I followed the same process to extract all the meshes, create prefabs, set up different color options and link it all up to the scripts, as I did in the video linked to in the top right. I have noticed that the creators of these assets probably created the females a while after the males, since they are generally more polished. The animations especially are much smoother. So our males are quite rugged compared to their fairer counterparts. Linking up the animations and triggers as well means we now have female units with all the functionality of male units without too much effort. Next up, a small change that increases the cuteness factor. Up to now, the building models I've used had a dark doorway through which the unit would just disappear and reappear. By cutting that panel out of the models, we could actually peek inside the buildings. This means we also needed to add a floor to each building, else the terrain itself would be visible inside the building through the doorway. We add colliders to the floor and steps only, so the unit walks up the stairs and on top of the floor when entering and exiting the building. I think this adds a lot of appeal to the buildings and the interaction between building and unit. Next, I wanted to add some extra visuals to the bigger picture. I thought this simple ring of clouds around the perimeter looks quite good without interfering with the map and gameplay itself. I'll still play around with some different options, but for now I'll keep this as is to add some ambiance when zoomed out. Next, one mechanic I have not kept updated throughout all the changes I've made is the fog of war and exploration. It was doing all kinds of weird things because of this. So I spent some time fixing it up, making sure it acts properly with my adjustments taken into account. I also added a vision range for each completed building, since your base should always be visible, even when no units are around. Finally, I've been testing the game a lot with increased game speed. This will be a handy feature to have when a player may want to rush through certain periods in the game, for example just waiting for enough resources, or for buildings to complete without having much else to consider at that time. At some points in the task queue at high speeds, it happens that a chain of tasks gets broken and the unit just stands there without completing the task and moving on to the next one. This is problematic. As far as I can tell, there are two main reasons for this happening. Firstly, up until now I've used a method that waits for a specific length of time before queuing up a task or closing out a task. I've known for a while that I'd have to get rid of this, since it would cause havoc when saving and loading. For example, if you save between the order to wait being given and the actual order being executed, and you load it again, that order would not be in memory and wouldn't execute. And trying to also save all of these will need yet another queue to keep track of. I rather replaced this by adding a built-in wait time for each task. So it gets loaded into the queue immediately, but the amount of time it has to wait before firing first needs to run down before it gets considered. To keep track of this, I've utilized the time ticker system explained in the video linked to in the top right, which executes an event 5 times per second rather than every single frame. So every 0.2 seconds, the number of ticks each task needs to wait before being executed is reduced by 1, if it is more than 0. When it becomes 0, the unit can execute the task. This has greatly improved the stability at high speeds, but once in a while a task still derails. The other factor which I think is causing problems when game speeds become very fast is the transfer time between the animation states and their feedback link to what happens behind the scenes. I am still investigating this, but I'm leaning towards decoupling what happens behind the scenes from the animation completely. I think it's fine if what happens behind the scenes triggers the animation, and if the animation event triggers the sound effect, since this doesn't impact the game state behind the scenes. But linking the completion of a task to the event of an animation is probably what's causing these issues. I either need to handle this differently or find a way to ensure events from the animation always fire, even at high speeds. And that's it for this update. Note that I've switched off the restrictions that prevent units from walking through buildings for now. They take some time to set up, and I'll add them back in when I'm happy with the floor plans and building layouts. In the next video, I'll discuss the minimap system I've also been working on. You can't just have a second camera looking at the map from straight up, since this means almost double the amount of rendering would be required each step. Also, you specifically want to exclude unimportant detail and focus on a small number of specific things, so we require a different approach. More on that in the next video. Please consider subscribing to continue on this exciting journey with me. Goodbye.